Today we are releasing a preliminary report on the Rhode Island Convention Center Authority. And it's preliminary because there are still more documents that we need to get so that we can thoroughly cover the issues at the authority. Actually Representative Philippi will fill you in on that, but basically it's the collective bargaining agreement that we need to get. There is some liabilities there and some opportunities as well. As an overview, we looked at the Convention Center Authority because it consumes a lot of taxpayer dollars every year. Last year it was just shy of 25 million, and this year it's over 25 million, so it's going in the wrong direction. That's a lot of money for a building that when it started was sold as it was never going to cost taxpayers a dime. To date, the complex, which is the 3 buildings over there, have cost taxpayers over $450 million, and by the time the bonds are paid off, it will be over $750 million. And all that money is being spent without the taxpayers ever having approved the expenditure. They've never had a chance to vote on it. Our study has shown problems and opportunities. One of the things that I can say is, I think it's got very poor management. When the Convention Center Authority was built, even before it was built, the state of Rhode Island, and Governor Sunland was the governor at the time, signed a lease agreement with the Convention Center Authority that transferred all the financial liabilities of that complex onto the shoulders of the taxpayers. Well, imagine in private industry, if you didn't pay the bills, if you didn't make enough profit, you'd be out of business. You'd be fired. But when you're the Convention Center Authority, you just decide how much you're going to ask the taxpayers for this year. There's never a time that they've been held accountable to making income, to making profit. And as a result, in my opinion, their management of that facility has been very, very poor. We have at the end of our report many recommendations, and we're hoping that the governor and the board of directors will look at this seriously and do something to make that building work better. It needs to be busier. It needs to be more profitable than it is today. Not only because it won't consume as many tax dollars, but because if it is busier, it will be more of an economic stimulus to our economy. Right now, they're operating at 40%. What if they were operating at 60 or 70%? Just think what they could contribute to our economy. They need, first of all, though, to get a really good marketing plan. We requested the marketing plans for the last 6 years from the authority. They have been characterized as being maintenance plans. A real marketing plan is based on research. What are your competitors doing? What are your strengths and weaknesses? What are other facilities? You benchmark yourself against other facilities, locally, in the region, even along the mid-Atlantic states. You try to find out what your customers, what your customers need from you. Their marketing plan has none of that research in it. It's a list of activities, I guess, is the best way to describe it. So a lot of our recommendations is for them to do the research and to actually get a good marketing and sales plan together. They certainly have the number of people. They have 9 staff people who are involved in marketing and sales at the executive level, and they also give about $500,000 a year to the Providence Business Bureau. That's a lot of money and a lot of people. If they can't put together a good marketing plan, then they need to get different people who can. Because the marketing plan will drive the sales, will drive more business in the complex. Again, We're the Republican policy group. We've worked really hard for 3 months. A great group of representatives who have come every 2 weeks, who have been involved in guiding this and researching it, giving good ideas, good feedback. But that's where our role will stop, except we're going to check in quarterly with the Convention Center Authority to make sure that they are doing something to clean up their act and become better. It's about becoming better. We're not going to tear them down. Nobody would want to buy them, but they can be better. And now, I guess, we'll open it to questions and answers. This is Representative Riley, who just came down from Boston on a train, so he's available for questions too. We kind of divvied up the topics, so depending on what topic you ask about, because have you all gotten a copy of the report?
Just
Okay.
got one just now.
Okay, so you can ask questions.
Did I hear you at the outset say that their appropriation was $25 million?
This year, a little over 25 million this year.
So what are we getting for that?
Well, what are you getting for that? I mean, the building exists, that's what you get for that.
Our scrutiny.
Our scrutiny. I mean, seriously, it was sold as a building that would never cost taxpayers a dime, and it continues to cost us money. They need to start they are running a deficit in operations. So take their debt out of it, which is about $23 million a year. Above the $23 million a year, they have operating expenses. That's salaries, that's electricity, utility costs.
$2 million?
It's a little over $2 million this year, right? Parker, this is Parker Gavigan, pointed out that they're paying their electric rates late. How can you do that, right? They're clearly not a strong management team if you can't even pay your electric bill on time.
Do you have a problem, personal or otherwise, with the management there?
I don't know them at all. I've never met them. I do have a problem that they're not doing the best they can for the taxpayers of Rhode Island. They've been there 25 years. You'd think by now they would have figured out how to make that building more profitable for the state of Rhode Island, especially in our bad economy. Think about it. If they got more conferences in, if they got more events in, there's I was going to say velocity, or velocity of money, but what it means is you just get more business in. You get people going out to restaurants. You get them renting cars. You get them going to other places in Rhode Island. You get more stimulus. That's what that building was put there for. In fact, that's what their mission statement is.
What do you think the CBAs will show you that you don't already need?
Blake actually took the collective bargaining agreements, so I'm going to let him come up and talk about it.
Thank you. So we use the legal. I'm sorry.
Representative Philippi.
I'm Representative Blake Philippi, and thank you. We use the legal APRA request to acquire the documentation to do our investigation. And what we found in a fiscal note, and I'll quote it for you, sir, and this is a fiscal note to the year ending June 30th, 2014, is that, quote, the authority's legal counsel has determined that it is reasonably possible that the authority could be responsible for the funding and unfunded pension obligations attributable to SMG's labor force, past and present, who are beneficiaries of the union-sponsored multi-employer defined benefit plans to which SMG contributes. So the issue that we have is that those labor agreements weren't provided to us. And if the taxpayers are going to be on the hook for these pension obligations, I believe that those are public documents which are subject to APRA requests. And we've requested them 3 times. It hasn't been provided to us. The collective bargaining agreements haven't been provided to us. And we believe they have an obligation to be provided. And if they are not, we will exercise all legal avenues to obtain those documents.
And there's also, they're going to be renegotiated.
In This year and next year, those CBAs are going to be renegotiated, and we believe that's the perfect time for public scrutiny of the relationship between the management companies and the workforce.
Have they been resistant or not forthcoming?
I would say not forthcoming. And as you probably know, Steve, under APRA, there are deadlines that they must meet. One of our requests, the deadlines have passed. We issued a new request recently, and that deadline hasn't passed yet. And when it does, if they do not reply, as I said, we will pursue all avenues to force the disclosure of the documents.
Are they a line item in the budget? How is it structured?
I believe Patricia will be able to speak to that more intelligently than I.
We're trying to get
Yeah,
it.
we're on the finance committee, I'm on the finance
Right.
committee, so no, it's not a line item. And that is one of the things we're going to be pursuing.
Where is
It's in
Article 1.
Article 1, just part of debt service. It's just a line item in debt service. So we actually wanted to show up as a Rhode Island Convention Center and how much we're spending on it every year, so that we can keep track of it.
But it's not broken out present.
No, it is
I
not.
think it's within the DOA budget actually, because they have the line item for all
No.
non-transportation debt service.
A Department of Administration actually gives $250,000 a year to the Veterans Memorial Auditorium for their utilities.
That's it.
So here's a silly question. It's been sort of self-perpetuating over 25 years? Or how many years?
About 25 years, so it started in 1991.
So can any of you say you voted against it or for it?
Nobody has. Nobody got
Well,
to
I
vote.
mean,
Taxpayers never got to
no,
weigh in
I
on
mean
this.
for the line item,
Oh.
the budget, for the funding for the convention center. You
Well,
all
she's
probably
act-
voted for it.
It's all lumped into one big sum, so.
It's lumped into one big sum, and I have voted against the budget all of the 4 years that I have voted, so
That's what I'm
no,
looking
I've never voted
You
for it.
voted, you've not voted for it.
And we also have a bill in this year, it hasn't been heard in finance yet, to make it appropriated so we can see it. And hopefully it passes, it hasn't been heard yet.
And is that bill specific to the convention center?
No, it's specific to quasi-public with certain dollar amounts.
Patricia or any of the other representatives that could address it. Board of directors here, you've got an 11-member board, a new chairman just appointed by the governor. Where is this board and their accountability? There's supposed to be some oversight of the authority. What's going on with this board?
Yeah, they're not doing their job.
You know, as a new representative, I think one of the things as we were studying this, to see that there were three, separate management groups, among the three facilities, plus they've hired 2 management groups. I kept asking the question, why is there a need for this 5 different levels of management, to do this job where they're creating a deficit every year. On top of that, you think about it, if they had never built this project, when you think about the major tenants, the P. Bruins, the Providence Friars, and things, if we had never built that, we would virtually have the same tenants, the circus, using the dunk. So what was the purpose to build the convention center? How much? In fact, we're only at 40% capacity. It's 60% empty. Moreover, just a recent concert they had, I was just blown away by this. They had Neil Diamond come in. They promised him $750,000. 5,000 people showed up. In fact, I didn't even realize he was in town. We asked among ourselves, anybody know Neil? It wound up costing $179,000. What kind of management is that? You'd have an agreement where you make X number of people show up, or guess what? You get X number of dollars. But when you're playing with taxpayers' money, and to that effect, that's just incredible to me.
Representative, you're saying about Neil Diamond, if the dunk had just shut its doors that night,
It would have made more
It would
money.
have been a better position, yes.
179 grand in the hole.
That's right.
From that one show.
That's right. You would have tailored a contract that you bring in X number of people or you get X number of dollars. But to promise that up front, regardless of how many, that was just incredible to me. And again, think about the major tenants that are in the dunk. Had we never built this, what difference would it make? We would be still better off if we had never built this. And of course the promise was, again, Patricia hits it right on the head. Never cost the taxpayers a dime. That just keeps resonating in my mind over and over again.
Yeah, they recently put out an economic impact study but they didn't pull out the Civic Center, the Convention Center. And if you think about it, the home show, the boat show, the flower show, all of those are now held at the Convention Center, but originally they were in the Dunk or in the
That's right,
Civic Center.
exactly.
So what new business has the Convention Center grown in
And-
this amount of time? Did we really need that building?
Yeah.
Probably not, but we've got it now, and now they really need to start filling it up.
And even the size of the project and the amount
Sure.
of money, they kept expanding it, more money. For what purpose? Ultimately, it just doesn't make any sense.
The truth is, it's 60% vacant.
Yep.
We actually requested a list of all of the events that they had by month. So we were able to go through every single month for the last 3 years, and we knew exactly how many events by month they've had. 40% of the time, they're busy. 60% of the time, they're empty.
And we had also, and the other thing is we had asked, we're looking at other convention centers, how many events were they holding versus how many Providence was holding? And I think, Parker, you might have been doing some research on that, I don't know, but, that's one of the things we wanted to find more about. What are other convention centers doing and what kind of events are they have versus how many Providence has in? And that's something we still don't have an answer to.
I want to make sure, so you haven't yet done the analysis of Hartford or Worcester or any other conventions?
Yeah, we've actually requested some information from those convention centers, and it must be a brotherhood out there because they don't want to tattle on one another. So it was really difficult for us to get the information from them. But I guess the point is, that's what their marketing research is supposed to do. Their marketing research is supposed to be benchmarking against other convention centers in the region, so they know how busy they can be. So they know, what's normal for here and how to go up from that. They haven't done that research either.
Tricia, can you answer the question about the board? I know in the report highlights the accountability of the board.
Yeah, they've been absent, in my opinion. They've just not done their job at all. Whether it's, their job is to run a business. This is not a jobs factory to give out jobs. This is not a charity. It's a business. And they're supposed to be there making sure that that business is profitable. They hire the executive team. So if that executive team is not producing, the responsibility falls back on that board of directors to make sure that they hold their team accountable. It has to be profitable. It can't be, so you only lost this much this month? Great, right? That would never, ever exist in private industry. I think Representative Giarrusso can attest to that. That board needs to set performance goals for its management team. It needs to be monitoring it, giving oversight, and making sure that the goals are met or the team is changed.
You know,
And here's a businessman.
it's not
Can
really,
you identify yourself?
it's Anthony Giarrusso, representative from East Greenwich and West Greenwich, District 30. But, we can't hold it to the exact standard as a business because it is quasi-public and it's supposed to have a benefit to getting people into our state. But if it should run somewhat, as Representative Morgan said, you've got to follow a business model, even though it's not a legitimate business. You see it in airlines. If you're not filling the seats, what are you going to do? How much does it cost you to fly that plane? If you're at 40%, I got a feeling that plane's not even going to take off. So you might have to lower the prices. You might have to offer other things. We're not asking them to be profitable. We're asking them to support our economy. We need to get people here. We got a beautiful state. We have so much to offer. Get people over here so they can see it. And it's all about accountability. When you can fall back onto the taxpayers, you lose a little bit of that edge. You lose that hunger to make sure that this place is going to be full. We're not going to ask for 100%, having a 100% fill on the convention center or the Dunkin' Donuts Center or even the Veterans. But you got to do better than 40%. A kid out of kindergarten can do better than 40%.
I appreciate that you folks are the Republican policy group, but it would be too far afield to call it a white elephant. But
No.
Well, the thing is, it's already there, so now it's not gonna disappear.
Big gray elephant over there, I think.
I mean, there's definitely some use to it. I grew up in Providence, I remember what it looked like over there, and it's a big advantage over what it used to be. It used to be a pit. But the thing is, make something of it. You got it, let's do it. If you build it, they will come. All right, we built it, now let's market it so they will come. And it's redundant to say that, well, we have 40%. That 40% has an asterisk attached to it, because as Rep. Morgan said, there's a lot of things that used to be here that were here long before the convention center. You know, we used to have the auto shows, we had the RV shows, the boat shows, they were all at the Civic Center before. So why do we need it? So let's do real conventions.
You're the business world representative,
Yes.
Neil Diamond concert, I mean, close to $180,000 loss.
Well, the thing is, if you operate a business like that, you can start up at 9 o'clock in the morning, you'll be out of business at 9:15. So you can't. I mean, how can you start out with a loss? So definitely not. That's bad. It's like the airplane. If you're 40%, you don't even fly. It's cheaper to keep the plane on the ground. Well, it would have been cheaper to keep the people, just say, cancel the show.
White elephant, I like that.
well, it's
I would just like to just add something to what Representative Girusso said, which is basically, I know he said we're not asking them to operate as a profit, but I had suggested that, you know, we might want to target, say, a 10% decrease in expenses over several years to maybe bring it to a zero at some point where they are hopefully, you know, at least breaking even. I mean, that would be a goal I would have, because I think, you know, the taxpayers, we have so many other needs. So I would hope maybe, you know, maybe it would be 5% or 10% a year where they could decrease the amount of, but this year again, as we said, 23 million, almost 30 million this year. I think it's the wrong direction. We should go from 23 down, not 23 up. It's the wrong direction, especially with the needs we know we have. So, yeah.
Yeah, Representative Riley has done a little bit of looking at the lease, and I'd actually like him to talk about it a little bit, because this, to me, is kind of the stink bomb in the room. I don't know what to call it other than that. When you take all responsibility and accountability off of your management team, that's what you get, a building that never turns a profit. So he was going to talk a little bit about the leasing agreement.
Yeah,
Remember the Paw Sox wanted one too.
Right, I'm Dan Riley, representative from Portsmouth and Middletown, District 72. The concern with regards to the lease agreements and the convention center specifically is that was really how they did the end run around voter approval of debt for their subsequent projects after the initial construction. And really is the reason why the project expanded in scope and the authority's mission expanded in scope so much, because they never had to go back to the voters. They never had to justify as a business or make a business case as to what exactly they were doing with the original money that was borrowed. Now, going out, issuing certificates of participation, entering into long-term lease agreements, it can take different shapes. In this case, much like the existing deal at McCoy Stadium, it was a lease-back arrangement from a state authority to the state. We're essentially leasing it from ourselves. When Mario Cuomo tried doing this in New York, he was laughed at. They were leasing Attica Prison to itself to try to balance a budget. Here, we've done it as a matter of course for almost 2 decades. Well, a little less than that, because this is really started in the late 90s, a lot of this project. The issue is that with the potential Paw Sox relocation project, at least as currently proposed, with the South Power Station Nursing School project, it's increasingly being looked at as a viable option to otherwise not get voter approval for these types of projects by entering into these lease agreements. Whether or not it's the state leasing it from itself or the state leasing it from some sort of private entity, we're being locked into long-term costs. That's the equivalent of having debt on our books. And the problem isn't using this as a form of financing. It can be incredibly effective. The problem is that we keep entering into new deals and we're not paying off the existing deals. This wasn't building a bridge, putting a toll on the bridge, and then as soon as the bonds are paid off, you pull the toll off. This is actually the opposite of that. We borrowed taxpayer money to build it. It hasn't been successful. It didn't meet its initial business case. And as a response, we piled on more debt. And that's why we're stuck with this appropriation. And in my opinion, worse than us appropriating over $20 million a year in debt service, we have yet to be provided, either the Republican policy group or the state as a whole, anyone in the legislature, with a business plan by the Convention Center Authority to get itself out of this hole. They have never attempted to make the case that we have to set our rates very low and lose money for a time in order to attract people who we then can make money on the back end from. That's a plan. That's a plan that we can discuss the specifics of and the pros and cons of. We've never been presented with that. So instead, we are given a bill in excess of $20 million with absolutely no way to get out of that, now or in the future. And I think that's why the Convention Center Authority deserves scrutiny, and moving forward on other types of projects, why each of those projects deserves similar scrutiny as well. Because it's not always the project that's initially proposed, it's what it becomes after the fact.
Great, thank you.
Very well.
Do you want to come up, Sherry? One other thing that I really wanted to mention was we've talked about business plans, accountability, about losing money on events, about if you lost money, you'd be out of business. In the summer months, which is June, July, and August, that building is virtually empty round the clock. The average number of events in the summer months for the last 3 years, is 4.5 events a month. But the salaries go on, the overhead goes on. It's over $400,000 for each of those months, on average, but only 4.5 events. So all those 3 months, we are losing money every month. And again, no business plan, no accountability, no way to use that building more in the summer. I can't imagine that you can't get conferences in here in the summer. A lot of conferences happen in the summer. Why not here in Providence? It's beautiful in Rhode Island in the summer. But they haven't done the work. They haven't done their homework. They haven't dug in. They haven't put in the effort. It doesn't come naturally, so they're content to pay the salaries for 4.5 events a month on average.
I have one thing I have to add.
Okay. Any other questions?
Not to be lost in all of this, when we started this policy group, it was long before this whole thing with the Paw Sox came up. And it was like a home run, no pun intended, because we started this group and we started the discussion. And when we started to see who the players were in the Paw Sox, there was a parallel. It's the same players, and the game plan was essentially the same way. And we haven't seen all the language of that, but we know that you're entering into a lease agreement, and what could go wrong when you're entering one of those. It's not about the taxpayers at that time, but eventually it becomes part of the taxpayers. So I think just by one broad sweep, this Paw Sox thing just came to us. So that was incidental, but it's the same thing, just a different venue, different decade.
So you're saying the same players, you need Skeffington.
Yes. May you rest
Yeah,
in
he was
peace.
the bond counsel when the convention center first put out the bonds, and he was there when the leasing agreement was devised and signed.
And structured.
So, and one of the things that, we were just learning this in the beginning. We were just learning about the leasing agreement with the Convention Center Authority, and I happened to be listening to the radio and heard him say, well, we're going to get all private money, but we need a lease from the state first. Doesn't that sound eerily similar? It was just taking the responsibility and putting it on taxpayers' shoulders.
And the devil's always in the details. And nobody knows how to play the detail game like the insiders.
Any other questions? Okay, great. Thank you for coming, really. I appreciate it very much.